Hey everyone, welcome. We're ready to jump into a deep dive about self-driving cars today. Or at least cars that are getting, pretty close. Thanks for sending over all this cool info on advanced driver assistance systems, ADs. We're excited to break this down.
What really fascinates me is how ADAS is using all this technology to really change the whole driving experience, not even just, safety.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Going through all this research, I was struck by how much of this stuff is already out there. It's crazy. Feels like just a few years ago, this was all sci-fi.
It's amazing, right? And to think, it all comes down to giving cars a way to actually see the world around them, giving them senses. It's all about this network of sensors, radar, LiDAR, ultrasonic sensors, and, good old-fashioned cameras working together.
Okay, I gotta ask, break it down for me. We've all heard of radar, right? But how does that work in a car?
So it's kind of similar to how bats use echolocation. Yeah, so the car sends out these radio waves, and by figuring out how those waves bounce back, it can tell how far away things are and how fast they're moving. Other cars,
So it's not just oh, there's a car in front of me, it's that car's coming up fast, or that one's moving away, which makes sense for adaptive cruise control, that thing where the car keeps a safe distance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now things get even more, I guess you could say, sophisticated with LiDAR.
LiDAR, huh?
Yeah. Instead of radio waves, LiDAR uses lasers.
Lasers.
I know, right? And what it does is it creates this super detailed 3D map of everything around the car.
So it's like a really powerful GPS.
You could think of it that way, but it's way more precise. LiDAR doesn't just say, hey, there's a thing over there. It creates this point cloud, basically a map of individual points. So the car can really understand the shape and position of things. Super important for navigating intersections and avoiding pedestrians.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So starting to see how all these sensors work together to give the car this full picture, everything going on around it. What about, you mentioned ultrasonic sensors. What are those doing?
Those are the close quarters experts.
Yeah.
Really good for those tight spots, parking, for example.
Ah.
Yeah, so they use sound waves to detect objects that are, maybe a little too close for comfort.
Okay, so that's how those parking assist systems work. So cool. And of course, you can't forget about cameras, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Cameras provide the visual data, so the car can actually see things like lane markings, signs, other cars, and pedestrians, of course.
So we've got all these sensors gathering all this information, but how does the car actually make sense of it all? It's one thing to see, but it's another to, understand and react.
Yeah, and that's where the brain of the system comes in,
Yeah.
the control unit. So it takes in all that data from the sensors, processes it, and then compares it to these pre-programmed rules and algorithms. It's constantly analyzing, looking for risks, predicting what might happen next.
Wow, so the car is thinking ahead?
Yeah, trying to figure out what other drivers or pedestrians might do. It's pretty cool. And then based on all that analysis, the control unit decides what to do, whether it's adjust the speed, hit the brakes, or even steer the car.
It's crazy how much decision-making power these systems have.
It is. And as the technology keeps advancing, it's only going to get more powerful.
Which brings us to the idea of levels of automation, right? It's not just every car with ADAS is a self-driving car. There are different levels of capability.
Definitely. It's kind of like a stairway leading up to fully self-driving. Each level is like a step with a different degree of autonomy. And level 0, the very bottom, is no automation at all.
Okay, so level 0, that's your classic manual car. The driver's completely in control. What about level 1? How does ADAS start to creep in there?
So level 1, that's where we start seeing what we call driver assistance features. They're there to help, but the driver is still the one calling the shots. Lane departure warning. The car might vibrate the steering wheel or make a sound if you start drifting out of your lane.
Oh, yeah. I rented a car with that recently. Kind of freaked me out at first, honestly.
Right, But you get used to it. And it's a good example of how ADAS can be like a co-pilot. It adds safety, but doesn't completely take over.
It's like a gentle reminder to stay focused. So what about level 2? How do things get more automated there?
Okay, so level 2, that's what we call partial automation. The car can actually handle more than one thing at the same time now, but the driver's still got to be paying attention.
So more responsibility on the car, but the human is still the one making the final decisions.
Gotcha. What are some examples of level 2 features?
Well, there's lane keeping assist, which doesn't just warn you, but can actually make little steering adjustments to keep you centered in your lane.
Wow, that's pretty cool. It is. Or how about traffic jam assist? In stop-and-go traffic, the car can automatically speed up, slow down, and even steer a little to keep a safe distance from the car in front.
Oh, I would love that for my commute.
Right. Makes things so much less stressful. And then one of the, I'd say, most important level 2 features is automated emergency braking. The car uses its sensors to detect a potential collision, and if the driver doesn't react in time, it can actually, slam on the brakes automatically.
Wow, that could really be a lifesaver in those moments when you're like just not paying attention or whatever.
Absolutely. It's all about adding another layer of protection to help prevent accidents. But even at level 2, it's super important to remember that the driver still needs to be, alert and ready to take over if needed.
Right, it's a partnership, not like handing the keys over completely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone from basic assistance to partial automation. What happens as we keep climbing this automation ladder? It's got to get pretty futuristic from here, right?
It does. Level 3 takes us into the realm of conditional automation. Now the car can actually make some driving decisions all on its own under certain conditions. And that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, come on, don't leave us hanging.
All right. We'll dive into level 3 and beyond in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Before we jump into level 3, I think it's worth highlighting one really important thing about how all these systems actually work.
Okay, what's that?
It's called sensor fusion. Basically, it's like the magic that lets all those different sensors we talked about, radar, LiDAR, cameras, ultrasonic, all work together.
So it's not enough to just have a bunch of sensors. It's about how they talk to each other and share information.
Exactly. Think about trying to understand your surroundings. If you could only use one sense, just sight, you miss a lot of information that you could get from hearing or touch. It's the same idea with ADMOs. Sensor fusion gives the car a way richer, more accurate picture by combining all that data.
Right. Okay, so that's how the car can make smarter decisions. Now I'm even more curious about level 3. You were saying the car can actually make driving decisions on its own now.
Yeah. And a perfect example of that is what's called traffic jam pilot. Okay, so picture this. You're stuck in stop-and-go traffic on the highway. It's the worst.
Tell me about it.
Well, with traffic jam pilot, the car can actually take over that whole annoying process of speeding up, braking, even steering within its lane.
So the car's basically driving itself in that situation.
It is. But here's the key thing with level 3. The driver still has to be ready to take over if the system asks them to.
Oh, okay. So you can't take a nap or read a book while the car handles the traffic jam.
Not quite.
All right.
The idea is to reduce some of the stress and fatigue of driving, but the driver still has to be, paying attention and ready to jump in if they need to.
I see. That makes sense. There are probably situations where, human judgment is still necessary.
Definitely. Level 3 is a huge step towards self-driving, but it's not the end goal, right? It's like this transition phase where the car is taking on more responsibility, but the human is still the supervisor.
Got it. Okay, so what comes next? Level 4, what makes that different from level 3?
So level 4 is what we call high automation. And the self-driving capabilities, well, they get pretty impressive at this point. One example is what they call urban pilot.
Urban pilot?
Yeah. The car can actually navigate, those crazy city environments, handling intersections, pedestrians, cyclists, the whole deal.
Whoa. That's a big jump in complexity. City driving is so much more, unpredictable than the highway.
For sure. And that's why getting level 4 automation to work in cities is, well, it's a huge challenge. You need some seriously advanced technology, including AI, to help the car understand and respond to all those moving parts.
Speaking of AI, I was reading about one of those urban pilot projects, and, well, they ran into this unexpected problem.
Oh, what happened?
Apparently, one of the cars got confused by a flock of pigeons in the road.
No way. Haha, that's kind of funny. But it also kind of shows that even with all this fancy tech, there are still things that can trip these systems up.
It's a good reminder that we're still, figuring all this stuff out. There's still a lot to learn and improve.
Absolutely. And, speaking of challenges, there's one big one we got to talk about. Cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah, that's a scary thought. What if someone could, hack into a self-driving car?
It's definitely a major concern, and the people working on these systems are taking it very seriously. They're building in all sorts of security measures to try to prevent those kinds of attacks.
I guess it's this constant back and forth, right, between the people trying to secure these systems and the bad guys trying to break into them.
It is, but it's so important to get this right because we're talking about, people's safety on the road. No small thing.
So cybersecurity, what other What other big challenges are we facing on the road to, fully self-driving cars?
Well, another one that comes up a lot is data privacy. Think about it. These cars are constantly gathering information, our driving habits, where we go, even what's going on inside the car.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy when you think about it.
Right. And so the question becomes, what happens to all that data? How do we protect people's privacy?
I mean, some people might say, hey, if it makes the road safer, I'm willing to give up a little privacy.
Exactly. There's this trade-off. Do we sacrifice some privacy for the potential benefits of safer roads? Not an easy question to answer.
So it's a big debate, innovation versus privacy. Okay, so we've talked about some of the challenges, but let's shift gears for a sec. How is ADS, changing the car industry right now?
It's having a huge impact. I mean, for one thing, it's driving innovation at an insane pace. Car companies are constantly competing to have the latest, greatest ADS features.
It's like a tech race, but in this case, it's actually leading to safer cars. So that's good.
Exactly. And it's not just luxury cars anymore. A lot of these safety features are becoming standard, even in, more affordable cars.
Oh, that's awesome. So more people have access to this potentially life-saving tech.
Right. But it does raise some interesting questions about, the future of jobs in the car industry.
Right, right. Yeah, with more automation, you got to think about potential job losses in, manufacturing and driving.
For sure. That's a valid concern. But on the flip side, this tech is creating whole new opportunities in areas like software development, data analysis, cybersecurity, all that stuff.
It's a whole shift, not just in the tech itself, but also in the kind of skills people will need.
Absolutely. As a society, we've got to be thinking about how to prepare people for this change. What training and resources do people need to succeed in this new era of transportation?
It's not just about the tech, it's about the people, right? The social impact of all this.
Yeah, and that impact goes way beyond just jobs. Think about the potential effects on our cities and our infrastructure.
Oh, wow. That's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah.
How do you see AD shaping the way cities look and function?
Well, for starters, one of the big things people talk about is reducing traffic congestion. Imagine a world where all these cars can communicate with each other and with traffic management systems. No more traffic jams.
That sounds amazing. I would love a shorter commute.
Right. And then there's parking. With self-driving cars, you could just get dropped off and the car would go park itself somewhere else, freeing up tons of space in the city.
Yeah. More room for parks or bike lanes or even housing.
Exactly. So many possibilities for making cities more livable and greener. And it's not just about cities either. Think about rural areas. Self-driving cars could help people in those communities get around much easier, especially where public transportation is limited.
Yeah, that's a great point. Access to healthcare, jobs, education, it could make a huge difference.
It could. It seems like ADAS has the potential to solve so many of the big transportation problems we face.
It does, but it's important to remember that it's not a magic solution. There will be bumps in the road, challenges we can't even anticipate yet, especially as this tech gets more and more common.
Right. It's all about balance. Recognizing the potential benefits, but also being aware of the potential downsides and figuring out how to minimize those risks.
Totally. It's not just about the tech itself. It's about the human side of things, the ethical questions, and how we as a society adapt to all these changes.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been such an awesome conversation. I feel like we've covered so much how ADAS works, the benefits, the challenges, the ethical stuff, the exciting possibilities. It's a lot to process.
It's been fun. And, before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought to ponder. So, thinking about the future of all this, I think we have to talk about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's already a big part of a lot of ADS features. And as we move toward, those higher levels of automation, it's only going to get more important.
Okay, so how does AI actually work in self-driving cars? What does it do?
Well, remember all that data we were talking about? The sensor data, the maps, traffic info, all that. AI algorithms are what process all that information. It's a ton of data coming in, and AI is basically making sense of it all in real time, helping the car decide what to do.
So it's like AI is providing the brain power behind all those split-second decisions.
Exactly. And it's not just reacting to what's happening right now either.
Right.
AI can help the car learn and adapt to different conditions, even anticipate potential problems. Hey, based on the data, there's a good chance someone's going to run that red light up ahead, so let's be extra careful.
Wow. So the car's getting smarter and more intuitive over time.
Right. And as AI tech keeps getting better, we can expect even more sophisticated self-driving systems.
Mm.
I mean, imagine cars talking to each other to prevent accidents, or figuring out the best routes to avoid traffic jams, or even like learning your own personal driving preferences and adjusting accordingly.
It's amazing to think about. But, all this AI stuff, it does make me wonder about the human factor. Like, what happens to us drivers? Will we become, I don't know, complacent or even forget how to drive altogether as cars get more and more autonomous?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something that, researchers are studying. There's a risk that as cars take over more of the driving, people might become too reliant on the tech and stop paying as much attention, which is obviously
Well,
not
could
good.
have use it or lose it, right?
Yeah.
If we're not actively driving, will our skills just like fade away?
Yeah, that's the concern. So the question is, how do we design these systems in a way that keeps drivers engaged even when the car is doing most of the work?
It's a tough balance. We want the safety and convenience of automation, but we also don't want to create a bunch of drivers who are like totally unprepared if they suddenly need to take over, or who just straight up can't drive anymore because they haven't done it in so long.
Exactly. So even as the tech gets more advanced, the human element is still going to be super important. It's about finding that sweet spot where tech and human skills can work together smoothly and safely.
This whole deep dive has been so fascinating. We've really covered it all, huh? The technical stuff, the potential benefits and challenges, the ethical questions, the future of all of this.
It has been quite a journey. And, as we wrap things up here, I just want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, lay it on me.
The future of driving isn't set in stone. It's something we're all shaping together through the choices we make, the policies we support, and how we engage with this incredible technology. As ADAS keeps evolving and cars become more autonomous, we have a real chance to rethink not just how we get around, but how we design our cities, our transportation systems, even our whole relationship with cars in general.
That's a great point. It's not just about the tech itself, it's about using it to build a better, safer, more sustainable future for everyone.
Exactly. And it's a future we can all be a part of creating.
Couldn't agree more. Well, if you've enjoyed this deep dive as much as we have, we hope you'll keep exploring this fascinating world of 8S. There's so much great information out there. And hey, who knows? Maybe someday soon you'll find yourself riding in a car that can really drive itself. Thanks for listening.